All right, we are live, day 435. Today, we are looking at properties that are just coming onto the market, and I want to show you. We haven't done this from this process standpoint. We've been mostly adding properties onto our comparable sales list. So let's take it from the top, right? Let's say you are looking for properties in a market, and right now I'm searching for properties that are four bedroom, 1.5 baths, because two toilets always rents out a lot easier than just one bathroom, especially if you're looking for family rentals, right? I'm looking for single family homes, and they've been on Redfin for less than 7 days. Now, on this page, this is where I found here in Hueytown, 2817 Emerald Ave, Hueytown, Alabama 35023. Now, this is just southwest of Birmingham. Okay. Now, Hueytown, pretty family centric. It's a little bit more quiet in this area, all the way out there. And I think there is a good amount of shopping around here. Plaza over here with Publix over here. So just slightly different area. Now, when you find a property, okay, I'm going to note a few things. One is obviously you scan through the photos and you understand what the general condition of the home is. Now, for a rental grade, I mean, I would like to make it look a little bit more modern. I will probably end up painting the entire home. I will probably end up refinishing these cabinets just to make it look a little bit more modern, maybe some different type of hardware to make it nice. But for the most part, I mean, this floor, you can either keep it or not keep it, but it's a kitchen. I personally would just put LVP on the entire home and get rid of all this carpeting. Okay. This is gonna full paint job, full flooring job. This bathroom looks a little dated, so it won't be a full bathroom renovation. Like this one looks fine. I could probably just paint it to be honest with you. But the other one, the half bath, I mean, it's just a half bath. So this probably looks fine. So no, just cosmetic rehab for the most part. Maybe you want to replace the vanity on on the bathrooms to make it look a little bit more modern. And I think that's good enough. All right, so now let's go and plug in some numbers in. So this is property listed for $155,000. All right, let me delete this multiple by 2 in the rehab calculator, and this cell in B6 is going to come from this spreadsheet here called the rehab calculator spreadsheet. Now, when I go down this list, I typically put aside $1,500 for the roof, even if it looks really good. But this is how I keep it this way because just in case, I usually see some issues with the roof. If not, it's a full roof replacement. So I always like to have some money in there because you won't know the condition of the roof until you actually get someone out there to look at the property. Then in row 46, I got $500 for some landscaping, just keep it tidy. For my home here, I said I'm gonna repaint the entire home, so it's 1260 square foot and G86 at $3 a square foot. For my flooring, I'm gonna replace the entire flooring at $8 a square foot or LVP. That's in G90. I'm going to repaint the cabinets here in row 112, G112 for about $3,500. Probably replace the hardware as well to make it look a little bit more modern and nice and attract a better tenant. Now, for my bathrooms, I'll probably just replace one of the vanities with a nicer vanity counter granite. I replace both of the toilets with a high pressure flush toilet here. This way I don't get any clogged toilet calls. And now, assuming the HVAC is correct, assuming the HVAC is correct, I mean, in good condition, I don't need to do anything else. So that's going to give me a total rehab number of roughly 25.4K. Very basic cosmetic rehab. Okay. Now for my rents, I'm going to look in two areas. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to Google HUD FMR. And I'm going to click on the first link. I'm going to go to the bottom of the page and click access to small area FMRs. I'm going to click on look up FY 2025 FMRs, go to Alabama, and I believe this is in, let me see what county this is in, double check. This is in Jefferson County. So I'm going to do Jefferson County right here. Now it's going to give you by bedroom count, by zip code, what the maximum rent is. And you're going to see right here that 35023, the max rent now is 1810, 1810. Okay. 1810. Max rent is 1600 for a 3 bed, and that's for 35023. 35023. Now, what you need to know is that this HUD FMR fair market rent is going to also include things such as utilities. So this is the rent ceiling. All right, by all means, this is the ceiling. Now, when you go and look at the market rents, you need to compare what the market rents are compared to the rent ceiling. And when you come to affordablehousing.com and you go to the owner section, you go to the market rent estimator, you plug in the address, and you plug in the bedroom count. Now you're going to get, on average, what the rent is typically for 4-bedroom homes, roughly in the area. 4. You're going to see right here is 1375. Great. Now, what's important here is that it's saying that the average rent, I'm going to write down all these other numbers, 1447, 1687, 1907 for the county. This is within a 2.9 mile radius. So within 2.9 miles, these properties on average rent for 1375. Had you thought you could get 1810, which is the rent ceiling, you would be grossly overestimating your rents. Why? Because you will not satisfy the rent reasonableness test. So what I'm pulling up right now, this is the Housing Choice Voucher Program Guidebook, right? Housing Choice Voucher, HCV. Housing Choice Voucher is what they rebranded from Section 8 to, because of all the negative connotations associated with Section 8. But they now call it the Housing Choice Voucher. Now, the reason they transition to the Housing Choice Voucher is so that, one, your tenants now have the flexibility to take that voucher and go to a private landlord, no longer public housing, so that they can rent out other properties. So now with this voucher, they can get government assistance to pay for the rent. Typically, you never see a tenant being able to spend more than 40% of the monthly income towards rent and utilities. Great. But at the same time, there's also a rent reasonableness test, right? So in section 2.2, it says that in conducting rent reasonableness, the PHA must determine whether the rent to the owner is a reasonable rent in comparison to rent for other comparable unassisted units. So obviously the size and unit type matters, but this essentially means that you can't charge more rent to someone, right? This 1810 number, simply because they're a voucher holder when the market is only demanding 1375. All right? So it can't be discriminatory. 1375 is going to be the rent that we can use for this property. Don't use 1810, because then you would be grossly overestimating, and then you're gonna lose money if you made your investment decision based off of that. Again, this is not an investment advice. I'm not soliciting any investments on this call. Just simply showing you all the work I do every single day. And most importantly, you gotta understand the rent reasonableness test. All right. So now, on your property taxes, let's go down to the payment calculator and get it from here. Obviously, you should double check with your county assessor records. So this is 65. Always check with county assessor's records before you close. And then for this insurance estimate for 120, I'm gonna do 120 and I'm gonna multiply it by 1.2. The reason I multiply it by 1.2 is because, well, you're assuming that this 120 is an estimate for a primary residence property. If you're using it as an investment property, it's very likely that your insurance company will charge you a higher premium because they view investment properties as a higher risk asset. So that's why it's so important for you to have this. Okay. All right. So now I got 10% set aside for my maintenance. I got 10% set aside for my property management, and I got 5% set aside for vacancy. What I'll call it most is right here. You definitely want to set aside money for future capital expenditures. These are your big capital expenses, which include your roof, your air conditioning unit, your water heater, because at some point in time, you are going to replace all those units. So don't be that person and not set aside this money, because you will now, let's say you get a bill for $13,000 in 100 months from now. and you thought you were making an extra $130 a month because you didn't put this money aside. Then you get slapped with the bill for 13 grand. All that money you thought you were making just evaporates. So don't be that person, right? Don't be that person that underestimates your expenses and overestimates your profitability because you were purposely ignoring an expense that you knew was coming down the road. Okay. So now in F19, I'm going to do 25% down. So my down payment is going to equals to my listing price in B4 multiplied by my down payment percentage in F19. That's 38,750. Excuse me. All right. So now that you have this stuff in place, I got my closing costs, got my renovations that we talked about earlier. If I can finance this property as my if my finance amount is equals to my asking price minus my down payment percentage, I'll be financing 116 grand. If I'm doing 7.5% return for the interest rate, what I'm going to do here is I am now going to break even essentially on my cash flow, assuming a 7.5% interest rate. So let's break down these scenarios, right? So if you are renting it out for 1350, 1375, excuse me, you'll be cash flowing $9 a month. That's a 0% return, assuming you bought this property for 155 with a 25,000 rehab. Okay, just using round numbers here. So what do you need to purchase this property for in order for you to, let's say, achieve a 10% return? Right? I'm not saying 10% return is the magical number, but it's at least an estimate, right? So watch what happens to my cash and cash return number in E9 as I lower my asking price to 100 grand. Just jumped up 6 points. Go 90 grand, 80 grand. So now at 80 grand, I'd be at 10.2% instead of 0. Now, am I saying that they're going to accept your offer for 82 grand? Not necessarily, but at least now you know what is the number you're looking for, assuming everything else, or all the other conditions were the same. Right, that's assuming a 7.5% interest rate with a $25,000 rehab. If the rehab doubled or tripled, right? Let's say the rehab doubled. Let's say the rehab doubled. Now it's 50 grand. Now all of a sudden your cash and cash return number tanked. So now you might be only be willing to pay 50 grand, right? So now you're 50 grand for a rehab, but you can only afford to pay 50 grand for the property now to achieve the same targeted return. So now you can cash out $500 but again, that's consuming 25% now with a 7.5% interest rate. Okay. All right, let me delete that. Let's assume the rehab didn't double. Okay. Let's say the interest rate now dropped from 7.5% to 6%. Well, now all of a sudden, you might be willing to pay 90 grand, right? Because the interest rate's going down to 6%. Now you're at 90 grand. So you're a little up from 82 grand, right? With the same rehab of $25,000. But now you're cash flowing $418 a month, assuming you can rent it out for $1375. So these are all the levers that you want to pull to figure out what scenarios make the most sense for you. That's how you get comfortable and remove some of the emotions out of the project. Now, again, we're not saying 10% is a magical number, right? I always say there are some folks that will buy properties for appreciation, right? If you have the ability to buy $1 million home, break even on cash flow, meaning you can just cover all your expenses, including maintenance, but you're making 5% in appreciation every day on $1 million property, that's $50,000. That's a great way to create wealth, right? Now, am I saying that that's a great strategy? I mean, that's really risky, but to each their own. Everybody has their own strategy. Everyone has their own approach for growing their wealth and building their investment portfolio. It's all different. So that's why we go through this exercise, right? So I hope this was helpful, everybody. If you guys want to copy the spreadsheet, go to affordablehousing.io, and then you go to Get Deal Analysis tool. You can get a copy of the spreadsheet. I didn't make the spreadsheet from scratch. I got it from a few other folks that modified, tweaked it so that I can analyze deals a lot faster. But today we covered one, how to find all these properties, how to analyze these properties, how to go through the scenarios of all these properties. So my hope is that you guys copy my homework, right? Go look at the same property I looked at today using the same spreadsheet. and put it on your own YouTube channel, because when the time comes and a deal comes across the table and slaps you across the face, are you going to know that's a deal? Or someone's going to ask you, why do you think it's a deal? And you can say, I know it's a deal because I've been looking at properties for the past 435 days and they were all extent deals. All right. I hope you all have an amazing Sunday. Spend some quality time with your family and friends today. That's what life is all about. I'll see y'all tomorrow for day 436. Have a good one.